we're going to get into the all hands meeting, which is something that I'm taking from that experience, which I thought was one of the most effective things that we did during our time at Techstars to keep everybody fully integrated, to keep making sure everybody knew what was going on at all times. And so I would encourage you guys, in order to build a strong team, I think that something like this is really beneficial. And so call it whatever you want. We called it an all hands meeting. But basically, it's a 30-minute meeting once a week. Like everybody has 30 minutes once a week, basically. And it's at the same time every week. When I was at Techstars, it was 10 a.m. on Mondays. And then once every 6 weeks or so, it would be at 8 p.m. on Mondays, because we had people, like I said, who were in Singapore and Australia and in sort of like the opposite time zone of the world. And so it just made it so that they didn't always have to be having their meetings at 8 p.m. on Mondays, and have everybody there. And I think that this is something that you guys can build out for your full company. I mean, we did it with 200 people and it was really effective. Maybe you guys want to do it for your company and departments. I could see that being really beneficial too. I think most people on this call are in small businesses, so why not just do the whole company? But I think that the secret to it is keeping it highly structured and routinized. Makes it something that your team is ready to expect every week and knows where they go to find that information. So again, having really tight operations, I think does more for culture than a lot of other just general team building can do sometimes. So here's how I would build it. I would have one individual in charge of coordinating the meeting each week. And so maybe that's your HR person, maybe that's an executive assistant, maybe that's an intern, maybe that's your head of marketing. I don't care who it is, but have one person who's in charge of structuring this meeting. And it's 30 minutes. And so it's really quick. And the amount of times we didn't even use all 30 minutes was great. And then at the end, you can say, giving you 5 minutes back in your day. And you have 3 segments in those 30 minutes. You've got leadership announcements. So your CEO will make announcements for the first 10 minutes or so, say what's going on in the company, things that have happened, just anything that might be going on. Have 10 minutes for a deep dive on one department or one individual's work. So I love this part. This is an opportunity for, say, your head of sales to do a presentation on how they do sales, or your head of finance to do a session on here's what the quarterly financials look like, or your HR person can say, here's what that culture survey that you took last month, here's the result of that, and here's what we're going to do to improve next quarter's survey results. Or it could be an intern, and they can say, here's what I've been doing this past month, and here's what I've learned about the company. And so I think it's a great opportunity to go deep on a subject that you just might not hear about, because if I'm in HR, why would I know anything about what's going on in marketing? And so it keeps everybody in the loop. I think it's cool to have something like maybe somebody gives a little bit of a 2-minute background on themselves, so you get to know that person a little bit better. And I think that's the most beneficial meat of that part. And then the last 10 minutes is Q&A for leadership. Now, here's what I would do with that. I would have a Slack channel that has like a survey link that's always live where you can ask for Q&A during the all hands meeting, so you can be asking questions during the meeting. I would have an email that goes out after the meeting with the meeting minutes and the recording, and say, if you've got any questions for leadership, you can send them to me, the person who coordinates the meeting every week, and I'll make sure that we ask that question next week. And so with feedback, I think the more ways you're asking for feedback, the better feedback you're going to get and the more feedback you're going to get. So ask for it in a couple of ways and use this as one of the places that you provide that feedback. Now, another thing that I like, in addition to the deep dive, the second 10-minute session being hosted by a different individual each week, is to have a different host for the meeting each week, a different MC for the meeting each week. And so, well, you might have one person who coordinates everything and sets up the meeting time, collects the questions, sends out the recording afterwards. I think one way to keep that as a pretty light job for that individual is that there's a rotating host. And so you would have whoever is the individual in charge of coordinating the meeting develop a really easy script so that the person who's hosting or emceeing the meeting just has to read off of it and maybe gives a 1-minute introduction about themselves. Maybe you have like a question that every person has to answer, like, what's your favorite vacation destination or whatever. And so they get to introduce themselves a little bit too. And this is kind of how that would look. So you develop a script and let somebody new host the meeting. Maybe the intern gets to host a meeting, maybe the VP of finance gets to host the meeting, and it just rotates so that maybe you only have to host it a couple times a year. So I would say something like, hello and happy Monday. My name is blank and I do this job in this department. So an introduction, welcome to our weekly meeting. I'm going to turn this over to our CEO for some business updates. Then I'll turn the meeting over to the deep dive host to learn more about the deep dive topic. Finally, I'll ask some questions for leadership. If you have any questions along the way, go ahead and put them in the All Hands Slack channel and I'll be monitoring. And then after each person talks, they have a simple transition. And I think it gives everyone some ownership over this experience. So I think it's really good for team building.